Should we start off by saying your name and then a little bit about your background?
Yeah, of course. So my name is Morten. I've I'm born and raised in Denmark, but I moved to London in 2011 when I was 19 to work in bars. I'd done like business college in Denmark, didn't quite know what I wanted to do, and then thought, I'll go to London for 6 months, maybe a year. I'd done the European Bartending School, EBS, and then thought, I'll get a bar job, see how it's like, maybe spend a year in London, and then, as they say, the rest is history. Sort of moved around between different bars. Started out in sort of a party bar called Adventure Bar. Then moved on to London Cocktail Club. Managed a couple of their sites. And given the vibe of them being quite party bars, when you're managing it, you're also bartending. So that was a very, very big party element. Then later on moved on to five-star hotel. Worked at a bar called Fitz's for a couple of years. And then COVID happened. With COVID, obviously, in hospitality went to a standstill. So I picked up programming and then sort of taught myself through. I say taught myself, like you do courses online. Someone has to teach you, even if you're self-taught. You rely on other people's knowledge. I did a few courses with Harvard University online. Studied coding, and then I built an app for bartenders to learn classic recipes with a big focus on flashcards, sort of self-testing and learning. And that's since developed into a lot more focus on books and history of drinks in what I call the Barcards project. So you look up a drink, you can see a history of every book that has ever been mentioned in, and then it becomes easy to look up based on recipes and stuff like that. But then after COVID, I moved back to London, worked with Swift for a bit, which is one of my favorite bars in the world. Worked there for a couple of years while I also worked in tech. So I was part-time at Swift. And then sort of slowly switched over into more office work away from the bar. But then after moving to Denmark, I decided to focus full-time on Péché. But then ended up randomly getting a part-time job in a Green Michelin restaurant in Copenhagen. And then World Class had delayed their entry deadline in Denmark, and I thought, why not? So that's sort of where we're at now.
Okay, so it's really, really varied. So while you were in London, it seems like you did a mixture of sort of high volume places, hotels, and also more sort of high class establishments. So you did the whole sort of thing in London.
Yeah, it's a varied bag of sort of everything. When you're young, you just want to have fun, you just want to party. So the party bars are very good. When I worked at Adventure Bar, there was a great bar in London at the time called Roadhouse, which was known for hosting the World Championships of flair bartending. They used to have a thing on called Bar Wars, where a bar team competed with two or three people. And I always, whenever we entered from Adventure Bar side, I always did the flaring then. So throwing bottles around, having fun with that. Occasionally they had like a mixology round, which was closer to what sort of the idea of most cocktail competitions is. You make a drink, you present it, talk about the ingredients. But I did that originally, so it was more on the sort of performance and fun side. I have a background in magic as a performance. Before moving to London, I performed sort of semi-professionally in Denmark at like weddings, corporate events. Did a few very small TV gigs. So the background is very much in entertainment and focused on that. Then London Cocktail Club, obviously huge party bar, big focus on free pouring, very, very high volume, but still a big focus on education of the new bartenders, which is something I quite enjoy. Making sure that anyone new coming into the industry can keep learning and developing. Because I think there's a tendency in bartending to assume that everyone knows what you know. So it's very hard to get very good training. And I don't think that's just lower range bars. I think that goes to very high high-end, nice bars as well, like World's 50 Best list. If you're to get a job in one of these bars, you're expected to already know everything. If you don't already know how to use a vacuum machine, a sonic bath, rotovap, then you're sort of like, why don't you already know it? But someone has to teach you at some point. So I quite like the educational element of these party bars where I came up from. Then moving into obviously 5-star hotels, bar like Swift, that at the time we were number 30 on the list of World's 50 Best. Very, very, very good service. Very big focus on classic drinks, and sort of a more refined style of like jiggering and pouring, chatting to the guests, and that interactive element. So it's a very different, varying background of bartending styles. But I think but I wouldn't have been without first doing the party bars and the flaring and the fun on that side. Because I think that shapes everything with what I do now. And it ties in with sort of the magic and the entertainment side of it. Sounds like a cliche, but ultimately what we do is we make people smile, we create memories. And I think whether it's magic or it's bartending, that's ultimately it. It's escapism. Give people an opportunity to forget everyday life.
Yeah. So there was no throwing bottles around at Swift. Then there was
Not really.
no doves coming out of your hat or anything like that.
No. I think you can occasionally just about do a little tin flip. Like the working flair is acceptable, but it's a lot more strict. Like if you drop, then you don't flare for the rest of the shift, kind of thing.
Yeah. So it seems like, yeah, there's a lot to pick and go through there. But now you're back on the outskirts of Copenhagen. Tell us about where you're working now.
Yeah, so I moved back to Copenhagen last year. At the time, I worked full time for a tech company based in England. And then after I moved back here, I ended that. And then I decided I wanted to focus full time on my app, Péché. But at the same time as I did that, this was back in February, I decided I'm done. I'd left the tech job full time, taking a chance on the app, living off savings for a bit. A friend of mine was looking for part-time staff. He was managing a bar at a restaurant called Ark in Copenhagen. And it's the first restaurant in Scandinavia to get a green Michelin star for sustainability. So I thought I don't have specific restaurant experience other than the little bit we had at the hotel. And working in a green Michelin restaurant would be a really cool experience. It's something I haven't done, so it sort of adds to the experience of the varying things I've done through time. And a green Michelin star is slightly different from a classic Michelin star. It's focused on sustainability. So we do the classic things of making sure that there's a big focus on very little waste. Any sort of byproduct of production of one thing goes into the production of another thing, and you reduce waste in that sense. But more importantly, there's a big focus on foraging. So the food menu especially is very seasonal. If the weather suddenly changes and something goes out of season, then a dish has to come off and something new has to come on. And then that then filters over to the bar, because if it isn't a wine pairing, there might be a cocktail pairing or a non-alcoholic pairing, and we need to make sure that that suits the new dishes coming out based on seasonality. We also have we actually have a mushroom farm as part of the restaurant. We don't run it from the restaurant, but it's owned by the same company, where we grow mushrooms, which obviously takes the lead on a lot of the food because it's a vegan restaurant. But very, very interestingly, some of the styles of mushrooms that is grown there is sort of on a blacklist in Denmark, that you're not allowed to forage them because they're almost extinct. But fungi farms, as it's called, has been allowed to sort of take substrates off these mushrooms and regrow them on the farm or in the lab, as you call it, which then means that these can be reproduced. Eventually, they can be put back in the wild. But that's sort of part of the whole green Michelin. It's very focused on the nature side of it. It's very focused on, I think it was Noma, or they were a big part of it years ago, sort of writing like the Nordic manifest of food, which two of the very big things from that is obviously the focus on the waste, but a really big thing is local seasonality. Because I know a lot of bartenders always focus on, oh yeah, it needs to be local, or I grew this myself, or I got this from like around the corner. But if it isn't in the right climate, then it's often a very sort of misunderstood thing that local is always better. Because if you're trying to grow something that's typically like tropical in your local environment, then it's actually less sustainable because you need a lot more water. The soil might not be perfect for it. So it's very much working with what we have in the local area. There's sort of all around Copenhagen, there's surprisingly good beaches, and there's a lot of natural growth there. So beach roses is a very big one. I know Noma tends to capture all of it as well. Whenever we go out foraging, it's always a case of who got there first that week. So there's a big focus on that, and it's quite an interesting side to get for bartending, because it's something I haven't done before. Seeing it from the perspective of a Green Michelin restaurant, that is very cool from both a creative standpoint, but also just from a service perspective. Like having worked at Swift, that's equally sort of high level from a service perspective with the guests, with the way you interact, the hospitality. But fine dining is a whole other level.
So you always seem like you always like to learn. So tell us a little bit about Diageo World Class.
In a nutshell, it's sort of the biggest competition in bartending there is. It's sort of the unofficial World Championships of bartending. It's the most prestigious one. It's also, I think, the longest standing big one. There used to be an equivalent one on I say equivalent. There used to be another really, really big one called Bacardi Legacy, obviously organized by Bacardi. Havana Club used to have one called Havana Grand Prix. They've since stopped. But World Class is a huge one that's gone since, I think, 2008 or 2009. And it's huge because it encapsulates multiple brands. So it isn't just, it's a rum competition, it's a whiskey competition, it's a gin competition. World Class encapsulates everything that is hospitality. And rather than just doing one drink and presenting, oh yeah, I made a drink, I made this tincture, I made this cordial, there's always an element of creative input in each of the challenges, as I'm sure you've seen when you went to the GB finals. Each of the rounds that we do has a different theme, which I really enjoy with the creative background I have in magic and performance. It's about finding that sort of creative touch to it. There's a saying that like creativity requires constraint. So whenever you are constrained to like a specific brief for the drinks, it's not just about, oh yeah, let's make a tasty drink. Well, that's easy enough. You just put some elderflower and raspberry in a drink, and then it's gonna sound nice, and people are gonna do it. And then if you add some prosecco and call it a spritz, it's gonna sell even more. But these rounds for World Class is much more about why you do it. So it's digging into the background. There's always different focuses. So typically there's always around focus on sustainability. And there'll always be around focused on like community. And then of course there's always around that's focused just on pure bartending skills, like what is your knowledge of the different ingredients? How do you drive like innovative techniques? So I did the Northern European final, which is a new thing they've started this year. So 10 Northern European countries all narrow down to top 3. And then those 30 people go to a Northern European final, which it's a bit of a misnomer in the sense that each of these 10 countries then find their national winner to go to the global stage. But the Northern European final also has an overall winner, which happened to be me. So that's a nice win. But one of the rounds, the Don Julio round, was a big focus on innovative techniques. And since then, I've seen one of the judges gave me 19 out of 20 points for innovation. But when you look at it from the outside, all I did was boil stuff in a pot in my kitchen. But the reason that I got a lot of points is because I could explain why. Because I think a lot of bartenders it's very easy to be distracted by the shine of a new tool or a new piece of kit that you haven't heard about before. But an innovative technique is all it's all relative. Have you heard about it before? Yes or no? If you haven't, then it's innovative. So I think a lot of bartenders mistakenly think, oh, I have to use a rotor map, or I have to use a sonic bath to do something wild. But in reality, you don't have to. So to done earlier around the example I had, I used beetroot and I used white asparagus because it had to be local. I had to use a Danish ingredient and a German ingredient, and white asparagus was in season at the time and it's very big in Germany. But I boiled beetroot in its skin because that isolates the sugars. And then the white asparagus, I made an almond milk, blend almond water, then you call it a milk. And I boiled the asparagus in that because that is a solution of fat instead of water, which means that you get different flavor compounds out because fat extracts different things from water. So because I was able to explain why I did it, it works as an innovative technique because we're understanding how flavor is drawn out of things. Whereas I could have just put white asparagus in a rotor map and then distilled it, and I could have got some of the finer notes off it. But it wouldn't be the same because why do you really do that? And also you tend to have more waste from that. So I think like world class is not only is it the biggest competition, it's a very good opportunity to learn different things about bartending and about how your own bartending skills are. Yeah, I think that's it. That's a very long answer to what world class.
No, it was a long answer, but it was a very good one. And I'm just thinking to myself, it must have been a great feeling for you to be able to, draw on these different, experiences that you had in London and Denmark and other places as you're doing this. Oh yeah, I remember I did that at this place, or I did that. I learned that from. That must have been a good experience as well.
Oh, absolutely. I think the background I have in entertainment is both good and bad. It means I like to do a little bit more abstract presentations. So from a presentational perspective, I spoke to the Danish Diageo rep afterwards, and he said it's interesting because my nervousness, normally when people get nervous on the like world-class stage, for example, they tend to sort of shake in their voice and they say a lot of this may be, and you sort of have these normal public speaking patterns of faults. But because of the way I rehearse it and practice it, it's almost like how actors do. I sort of pace back and forth, talking through the same thing again and again and again. But my nervousness comes out. I can stand with a confident body language. I can talk very confidently, but then my jigger is like this, which is really problematic because you're not supposed to spill, you're supposed to be clean. And from a bartending skill perspective, that's quite a different point. But I think my experience in performance and entertainment is hugely beneficial to this. Sometimes my presentation is too abstract, and some judges are a bit on the purist bartending side, but it's all part of the fun.
It's all part of the fun, and it was fun for you because you won. So, how did that feel?
Mad. When I originally entered it, it was sort of a last minute thing. I thought I'll enter it, see how it goes. I hadn't entered in Denmark before, and I knew it's obviously a lot smaller market than the UK. The UK is an insane market. But I entered it thinking I want to make at least the top three in Denmark and then take it from there. And then when we went to Berlin, it was obviously right. I'm going to win it now because then it's going to be really good networking and marketing opportunity for Péché to sort of build a name for that, sort of show that what I'm building can be used for something good, because obviously I'm using it all of the time and prep for this. When I won the Danish one, it was more of a relief than it was excitement because I was so nervous. And I was I really wanted to win it. So when you're standing there with the fellow two competitors who were in top three and you're waiting for the results, the skill level from the Danish side was very, very, very high. At the Northern European final, multiple of the organizers had come up and said that the Danish group were like extremely high level. The Danes and the Norwegians, for some reason, they just seem to really like in Germany. So waiting for the winner of Denmark, that was nerve-wracking because both of the other guys did it so well. And then after that, they obviously announced the winner of all the other 9 countries before announcing an overall winner. And it sort of dawned on me, like I had zero expectations of anything related to that. I didn't even think about it. We also didn't know they were announcing an overall winner until the day of these sort of awards. But I didn't bat an eyelid about it. I was like, someone else is going to win that. I don't care. I just want to go to globals. But then after they announced me and they'd announced the Norwegian winner, we were standing next to each other. And it sort of dawned on me that everyone had mentioned that the level in Denmark and Norway was really high in Berlin. So I thought that there is a chance. I'm not going to think it, but there is a chance. So that the overall winner of Northern Europe, that was just pure ecstatic joy. That was cool. But the Danish one was more like, that was a relief.
Yeah, so it was just a little bit of relief. So, have you entered before? Did you enter in GB, or was this just your first time?
It's my first time in Denmark. I think I've entered GB twice, but I've never taken it as serious as I have done this year. I've entered GB twice, I think once when I was at London Cocktail Club and once when I was at Fitters. And I've presented it when they came around to the bars, but I've never been in like anywhere really high in GB. Because this was, I think, last time I entered was 8 years ago, maybe. So there's a skill level difference, but there's also, I think, a humility difference in terms of how I'm approaching it. I have a lot more experience in the industry now, but I'm also just a little bit more, I don't know if humble, I don't like saying you're humble because that is not a humble thing to say. It's so weird. But there is an element of humbleness in terms of what is and isn't innovative. Because the more you know about the history of drinks, the more you realize about it, the more you get to the realization that everything is a twist on something that already exists. Whether you realize it or not at the time of making it, it could be an original creation, but it could also be analyzed and it's similar to something else. So I don't think any of the stuff I make is that original. I don't think my drinks are anywhere near the best ones, but I have a personality from performance that makes my stuff stand out. My ability to talk into the brands and the presentational aspect of why we do what we do. So one of the things I'm preparing for globals, we have to do. We have different briefs again. They're obviously not made public yet, but one of sort of the overarching concepts I'm working on is this thing I've talked about with why we do what we do and what it actually is. Because the question of like, what's your real job is something you're asked a lot in bartending. And it's also something you're asked a lot in magic. And I think it's probably something anyone in entertainment is being asked. Like, oh yeah, but what's your real job? Do you work in an office? Where do you sort of make your money? Like, why do you do what you do? And I think our real job is not just making the drinks. It's being able to present an experience, making something memorable to people and making people escape their everyday worries. And that's what's beautiful about both magic and bartending, is you can see on the guests immediately what impact you're giving them. Like seeing that instant smile when they taste the drink that's perfect, or seeing that smile when you bring over like a little extra thing because you overheard something, is nothing can describe that feeling of pure hospitality. Like if you've seen The Bear, there's an episode in season 2 called Forks that perfectly encapsulates why hospitality, why people want to work stupid hours in hospitality, knowing that you will never be rich financially from working in hospitality, but emotionally you can be very rich from working in hospitality.
No, yeah, I totally get that, and that's why I have so much respect for people that work in hospitality, and that thing that when people say, ask them what they do, and people say, "Oh, I've only got a bar job," or "I've only got," I said, "There's no only. That's not, that's
That's
you
it.
never say that. Never say that you only, people have to live, people have to drink, people have to eat."
Yeah.
And people need a place, to stay. And if you are skilled enough to make that experience, to elevate that experience, no matter, how much you're spending, that really is worth the weight in gold, really. That is really something special.
I mean, it became obvious during COVID, didn't it? How much people missed the pub. Like
Yeah.
it's that uh, Robin Williams film, The Dead Poet Society, when he has a whole quote about how engineering and physics makes life possible, but the arts and poetry makes life worth living. Something along the lines of that, but I think it's very beautiful. And I think that is any sort of entertainment and hospitality thing is on that art and poetry side of things. I don't like saying bartending is an art because I think it's a cliche and every entertainment person says, "Oh, I'm an artist." Like, fuck off. Um, but there is an element of that. What we do has emotional value rather than uh, measurable financial value, and I think that's equally, if not more important.
The final is in Canada. Are you looking forward to it? And tell us what you know so far about it.
I don't know how much we're allowed to say, which is why I had to backtrack before when I started talking about one of my plans. We have a handful of challenges, as is always the case at the global final. I am incredibly excited for it. We are starting the official dates from the 28th of September, I think, until the 3rd of October. So at the end of September, we're flying to Canada. We have been given briefs for a set of rounds. Some of them we can plan in advance. We have to make certain recipes, do some pictures for it, do some other creative things in advance. And some challenges will be sort of mystery box style things. So we've been given a name of one challenge, and then we've been told there will be later challenges, but we don't know what any of them are. Uh, we, I'm in the process of finishing off everything right now because we need to get everything in the next 2 weeks. So they have everything in writing. They can sort of polish off if anything is missing. But I've just had a bout of something that seems like COVID, which means I can't smell anything, so I can't taste anything, and that's not very good for prepping. But I'm super excited for Canada. It's a lot of stress because I have quite high standards for myself. I don't like to do something half, which is both good and bad because sometimes you just need to do what you have ready rather than itching away at doing something a little bit better. But the drinks are roughly there, using a lot of local Danish things, using a lot of international stuff. Uh, and it should be fun. I mean, there will inevitably be drinks from this that will be reproduced all around the world, hopefully, because there will be drinks that will be more reproducible than others, and then you have the standard world class stuff where you need 17 weeks of prep to do one drink, which I hustled I made a few things before we got the brief, hoping it can fit in somewhere. I read a whole book about the color blue because it's the rarest color in nature, hoping that we would get a Johnny Walker Blue Label round, but we did not. However, it's not all like lost. Like some of these things can sort of be transferred, although not directly. I made a few ingredients. One of them can be used. So yeah, a lot of wasted time, but a lot of creative playing around, which is fun. So I'm very, very excited, but very, very stressed.
Hopefully, you'll get something on mushrooms, and you'll be.
Hopefully, you never know. I will be using mushrooms from Fungi Farms. Yes. You have to work with what you have in Copenhagen. Yeah. So mushrooms from Funga Farm will be there.
Best of luck with that. So let's talk about your many skill sets and let's turn to Pesh. So tell me a little bit about what that's all about.
So I've always been very nerdy. I like learning. I like education. I have all the patience in the world for someone who wants to learn. I don't think there's any stupid questions. But there's sort of a correlating second factor that the more you tell me you know, and if you don't know it, I don't have patience for you. But if you're learning something, there's no stupid question. I wanted to build an app for learning, focused on flashcards, spec tests, being able to, as an individual, if you're in a bar that doesn't provide structured training, that doesn't provide a structured format for all the recipes, I wanted to provide something that an individual could use and learn the recipes from. So I built Péché. It's called Péché because it's sort of the joke in the industry that 5 mil of creme de pêche makes everything better. And then that was just shortened to that. So I built that during the pandemic. And then when I started working at Swift, I used it excessively to learn all the recipes. Because I was only working on the weekends part-time, it was essential for me to review the recipes every single week. So I used that for the flashcards. I used it for testing because it marks a test in the same way that a human would, like it crosses out exactly what's wrong. And then the guys at Swift picked it up. They have I think almost 500 classic recipes now in their compendium. And all of the Swift sites still use it now. So they have it as an internal private archive of recipes, both for looking up classics, for sharing the new menus, their seasonal ones, their monthly ones, but also for new guys to look up flashcards and learn it. So I built that all by myself throughout since the pandemic, slowly. I don't have any investors. I don't have any partners. It's just me, which is quite cool because it's been a very slow and long process, but it means that I can build something that I believe in. And it means I can build something that isn't going to be corrupted by a quick bit of cash. So there's no third-party data tracking or anything in it. I don't even use Google Analytics on the website because that very quickly becomes a rabbit hole. So there's nothing. Everything that it does is built by me personally. But it's quite cool being able to both program and bartend to build this. And then last year, I launched something called the Barchive Project, which means that if you want to look up, let's say, like a margarita, it will show you the books that the margarita cocktail have been mentioned in, all the way back to the first ones from the Cafe Royale book, which wasn't called a margarita, but it has the same ingredients, all the way through till now. Likewise, if you want to look up a Manhattan, an old fashioned, a martini, it shows you all of the books and all the variations that it's been mentioned in. So if you're a very nerdy, wanky bartender wanting to debate classics, you can see all the variations of the drinks. But also if you're a new bartender, you can see the different ways to make the same drink and compare that to how you make it in the bar. So the goal is that I can live off of Péché. Hence, I went full-time with it at the start of the year. It turns around now, like it pays for itself, but it does not pay enough for me to live off it yet. Because it's the only revenue stream right now is bars using it professionally. So businesses pay for it. But the Barchive project and everything for individuals is still entirely free. I intend for the Barchive project to remain free, but there will be a premium, standard sort of freemium model, a bit like Duolingo. There will be an element of that coming up soon. So you can have your own private archive. You'll be able to copy recipes from history into your own and then make your own twists on them. Because I think a very big thing in the bar industry, I think every industry, people always talk about like trade secrets, but it's an open, not secret in bartending that no one really comes back for your drinks. Like it doesn't matter how good of your drink is. There's very few drinks in the world where someone will go to a specific bar for that drink. People come back because of the hospitality. They come back because of how you made them feel. Everyone knows this, yet everyone acts like if they share their recipe, everyone's going to steal them and make them, and then they're going to get success. That's not the way it works. So I'm working on a big sort of collaborative sharing thing inspired by open source programming, where I'm working with a few bars, first in Copenhagen and then in London and other places, where old menus will be shared. Not just sort of, oh, here's the visual of it. There's various projects that already exist on the internet with that. And I know Daniel Nevsky, Cocktail Man on Instagram, is the latest one in this, making a very large database of cocktail menus. But what I will be doing is getting bars to share the recipes and all the prep notes from old menus, because then the newer generation of bartenders can see what is actually being done in the world's best bars now, and then they can learn by themselves if their bars don't provide the training for it. Because I know when I started, Nightjar was the big one in London. I would have paid so much money to see their menu, even though I knew for a fact that they used like a whale fat infused whiskey in their old fashioned at the time. I would never be able to make it, but I would have paid a lot of money to see the recipe. So the idea is to share recipes, and then as they're copied by the younger generation, you can keep track of where they're coming from. So over time, we can build sort of a historical reference tree of inspiration, rather than it being, oh, that person definitely stole my recipe. Whereas it could be a case of you were both inspired by the same thing, but we don't know.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. And I mean, say for example, somebody like me who doesn't have that background and wants to get into, just making cocktails at home just for, with friends or whatever. Is it good for that as well?
Yes. It's not a super pretty Instagram-like app at the moment, because it's just me doing it, and I don't do visual stuff very well. It's more function over form. You can download the app, you can look up any classic recipe, and you will get a recipe that is probably a lot better than if you Google it. So you will get a recipe, you'll get the instructions in the same way that any bartender would. If you know how to shake a drink, if you know how to stir a drink, it is absolutely an incredible resource for learning drinks. If you search for margarita, you'll get all the ingredients. If you just search for tequila and lime, you'll see all the drinks with tequila and lime for history. So for you making drinks at home, it is definitely a useful tool, but it's not built for the general market yet. It's built with the intention of it being professional bartenders or already sort of hobby enthusiasts who knows the basics, if that makes sense.
Yeah. That makes
It's a quick look up. So let's say you're a bartender, someone orders a Vieux Carré and you forgot how to make it. You can look it up super quick. You quickly get the recipe. You can now make that. So it doesn't have, very often I find one of the big issues with recipes on the internet is it's obviously very opinionated, because recipes are subjective. That's just the way it is. Bartenders can argue all day, every day about the best recipe for a daiquiri, but it doesn't exist. It's subjective. But I think a big problem with the recipes on the internet is because they're on blogs, and the only way to monetize, or the primary way to monetize a blog, is through ads. So they're incentivized to put a wall of hundreds and hundreds of words of unnecessary explanation on how to make a drink before the actual recipe. Whereas on Péché, you search for a daiquiri, you get, I think the recipe in there now is 50 rum, 20 lime, 20 sugar, because it's sort of standard base balanced one. Everyone has their own opinion on it, but you get the recipe on top. So you get the recipe for the drink. You'll be told, is it shaken, is it stirred, what type of ice, what type of glass, and then you can make it. So there isn't that absolute unnecessary wall of take out your shaking tin, first pour the rum, then pour the lime, then make your sugar syrup, then pour it in, then add some ice to the tin, put the other tin on top. It isn't that verbose, unnecessary thing in there. It's assuming a little bit of base knowledge. But once you have that base knowledge, it's a very quick reference tool. So right now it's focused on the industry and people who have a base knowledge of it. But once you have shaken a drink before, once you have stirred a drink before, it's an incredible tool.
All right. Okay. Yeah. That sounds good. And also, I was also going to say that if I was here and it's like, oh, what have I got in the cupboard? Gin, this thing, and this thing, and I was to put that in there, it would say you can make this.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you put like gin, orange, it will show you like breakfast martini, for example. And then if you click at the book references for the breakfast martini, so this is quite an interesting one that everyone sort of knows. It was created in the 90s by Salvatore Calabrese, a very famous bartender in England, because he sat over the breakfast table, had a piece of toast with orange jam on it, and thought, what if I put orange jam in a gin drink, shake it with a little bit of lemon, and then you have a very nice cocktail. So it's like a standard sort of sour where you have a spirit, you have a sweet thing, which is the jam, and then you have a citrus. But if you look back in the Savoy cocktail book of the 1930s, you have the marmalade cocktail. But then once you start digging into history, you also know that the Savoy cocktail book is just the definition of plagiarism. Like it would not fly today. There's another book from 1925 that also has the marmalade cocktail. So you'll be able to go in and see sort of the history of it. So if you were to search for gin and orange, that could come up. And then you can click on the book references for the Barchive and you can see all of these references for history.
It's a bit like, if you play piano, you sit down and you play piano. There's only so many notes, yeah. So you can say, oh yeah, that's mine. But somebody say, yeah, but if you play that backwards, then that's mine. So it's one of those things.
There's always two sort of major theories, and it goes back to a whole thing. I think it was like between Plato and Aristotle. They had two opposing views. That one is that everything is a few moving pieces, and the other one is it's all about the detail. And in drinks, it's the same. The guys at Def & Co wrote a book called Cocktail Codex years ago, it's sort of the most recent one focused on the industry, at least, that goes into the concept of cocktail families, where you group drinks. So they argue that there's only 6 drinks. There's the daiquiri, there's the old-fashioned, there's the Manhattan, there's a sidecar, which is like a margarita, there's a highball, and there's a flip. And then they put all recipes into these. Well, I would go further and say, if you are going to go down this route, then you have to think of the 5 basic tastes that chefs think of, which is sweet, sour, bitter, salt, and umami. But in drinks, we only really use sour and bitter. Salt and umami are sort of accents that are on the side, and then there's almost always sweetness in a drink. So with that in mind, we have sour and we have bitter. They form the foundation of every single drink there is. There's the sour, which is a category that is very widely recognized, which is the spirit, the citrus, the sugar, but it doesn't have to be citrus. It can be anything that gives sour. So there's a drink called a soon that was in quite a lot of cocktail books in the early 1900s, but then disappeared. But instead of using citrus, it uses dairy, because dairy has fat, but it also has acidity to it. And then on the other side with the bitter, you have the classic cocktail, the old-fashioned, which is the spirit, again, the sugar, but you balance the sweetness with bitter. So you sort of have the sour and the bitter as the 2 key components. And once you understand how to balance that, you can very quickly find out how to balance a drink just by reading the ingredients. And they call it, once you take sort of the simplest version of it, which is where the sidecar or the margarita falls in. So sidecar is cognac, orange liqueur, and citrus. And a margarita is the same, but with tequila instead of cognac, because it's tequila, orange liqueur, and citrus. So in the Cocktail Codex and the Def & Co book, when you take one liqueur and you put another liqueur in, they call it Mr. Potato Head, which I quite like because you just take one part out and you put one part back in. But I think the concept of Mr. Potato Head is it's every drink in the world, or it should be defined as if it's a one-to-one substitution. Because very often when you look at modern bars, you look at their menus, they might have made their own ingredients, they might have made their own vermouth blends. What they're doing is hiding these tastes. It's still just spirit, sweet, and either bitter or sour, sometimes a combination. But they're hidden within these ingredients. So it becomes harder and more obscure to actually find the patterns in it. But we can either look at it from the perspective of 5 basic tastes, and then we have these simple families. Like you said with the music, there's only so many notes. And you can take it to the extreme with that joking song was the Australian band Axis of Awesome, the 4-chord song.
Yeah.
Which is like you can take it to the extreme, and it's the same in drinks. Everything is the same and everything is not the same. Because once you layer flavor on top, which is the nose, all hell breaks loose because that is so much more complex.
It's complex, yeah. It's fascinating. So, with Péché, where can we find it? Is it online? Is it an app?
It is an app, it's a mobile app. It's available both on iPhone, Android, all of it. PécheHospitality.com or Péché.app on Instagram, and then there's a link to it. Just go in, you can download it. There's a big fat button on it that says join the Barchive. You click that, you have access to recipes. Right now, there's about 1,100 unique recipes on the Barchive. I say unique because there's a lot of small twists that I've not recognized as its own thing. And then there's about 4,000 book references under these drinks.
And then you said that you're still adding to it and you want to do more with it in the future.
It's continuously growing. Right now, the Barchive is actually completely wide open, like Wikipedia. So there are drinks on there that have been contributed by people all around the world. There's been quite a few contributors from Asia. There's been a few from South America. They're adding drinks that are local or drinks that are just popping up that they've learned from elsewhere. So the community is actually contributing to this ever-growing Barchive. And this is why the Barchive project as a thing will remain free, because it's community-driven. I mean, granted, I have made most of the contributions on that, but it is still an open thing. People are adding to it. Once that becomes too big, then that might be closed off a little bit. But right now it works because most people are good.
I suppose let's talk about your your other interest, magic. What's that all about? How did it start? And you talked a little bit about television.
Oh, is it? Well, you get into magic when you're really, really uncool. Like when I do magic now, people are like, oh, it's so cool. Like magicians are cool. It's like no one was cool when they started in magic. Let's put it that way. But in that sense, it's quite similar to bartenders. It tends to be, should we say, unique individuals that goes into magic and bartending professionally, because you sort of find your own little tribe. But magic is fun. I got into it as a teenager. A schoolmate of mine brought a trick to school. I saw he got attention, and I thought, I want attention. Where did you get that? And then I got into it. I started going to like magic events. It so happens that the biggest magic shop in, I think, Northern Europe was only about 40 miles from where I grew up. So I naturally went there a lot. They had hosted a lot of events with actually some of the world's best magicians. Went there, learned it all, started entering competitions. I won. There used to be a thing called like the Magic Junior Weekend, which was an event for under 18 magicians, where I won the stage magic competition and the close-up magic competition in the same year. And I don't think anyone ever did that other than when I did it, which is quite fun. And then in that time, I was in the first season of the Danish Got Talent, which was interesting, to say the least. I don't think the judges had got the brief of what the concept was, because they all buzzed me, but then they sent me through. So it was very strange. There was it was another TV competition, but based around a circus. I did that as well. And then I did a big competition with sort of the biggest traveling circus in Denmark. They organized an entertainment magic competition. And this is quite a cool, in hindsight, this is really cool. The director of the circus was sort of the main judge, and he disqualified me because what I did, he said, was not possible without having arranged it with the audience members before. That wasn't the case. I just did something that he thought was impossible, which is sort of the whole point of magic. So I think that's quite cool, having been disqualified from a magic competition because what I did was not possible. But yeah, I did that. And then when I moved to London, bar work and entertainment tends to both be focused on the weekends. So magic took a backseat. I'm still doing it at a very sort of hobby level. At the global world-class finals, I can say there will be magic because you have to play in your strengths. But I think like when you're young, being nerdy and being interested in a niche thing is not cool. But then you realize once you hit your late 20s, early 30s, being nerdy is cool again. Because now you have a personality, you have something that is different from other people. So doing magic when you're a teenager is definitely not a sign of being cool. But having it as an added skill in your 30s is all of a sudden quite cool.
So actually, there's one thing that I'm going to say. It's not about you at all. It's about your partner.
All right.
That got in touch and everything. Formula One.
Mm.
So yeah, I saw that. That seemed really cool.
Yes, she is the first and only Danish female Formula One mechanic. I actually think overall female full-time Formula One mechanic that's ever done sort of the circuits of everything. So she is incredibly cool, incredibly hardworking. In just like bartending, it's a heavily male-dominated industry, but even worse so in motorsports. But yeah, Formula One mechanic. She's done all of that. There's one thing I've got from her that I like to tell. There's there's an element of it that I shouldn't be saying, but sort of the peak performance of sports, as seen from the outside, is the pit stop, right? It's that 2.5 seconds, whatever it is, of just boom, boom, in out. What I find fascinating that she told me is that's always on the Sunday. All of the pit crew, everyone in the garage, that's essentially their day off. They have the most chill day on the Sunday. That is their day off. But to anyone from the outside world, that is the definition of peak performance. But I think there's something to be learned from that, which is they obviously, the pit crew and the engineers spend the whole week building, setting up the garage and setting up the track, and they prepare everything. They've prepped, they've trained, they all have their specific roles. And then on the performance day, where everyone in the world watches and everyone's like, oh, it's 2.5 seconds, it's magic. They sit and they chill. They wait for the message that, oh yeah, the car's coming in. They do their job, they sit and they wait, they do it again. I think like proper preparation and proper training for something is so key. And in the bar industry, it's what we call mise en place. You need to know where everything is. The day that you are like, once you're open, it should be relatively smooth. There's always going to be disasters because it's a busy industry. But it's the same with like the Olympics. Like there's a saying that the Olympics are not won at the Olympics. They're won in the months before during the prep. And I think that's just a very cool thing that's easy to forget. Whenever we watch something in any field that isn't our own, it can look like magic. But behind it is just an enormous amount of prep that then means it can look easy. It's going to be the same in Canada. Like once we get to Canada, for all intents and purposes, in theory, there shouldn't be anything to stress about because everything's planned, everything's prepared, the drinks are ready, the ingredients are ready, unless something breaks in the flight. In theory, when we land, it should just be right. Go in, do your presentations, do your thing. You can't affect what the judges think. You can just do what you've prepared, and that's it. I know that won't be the case. We're going to stress an enormous amount. Going to be in your head like, should I go out tonight? Should I not go out? Should I get some sleep?
Mm.
But in theory, once we get on the flight to Canada, there shouldn't be anything to do. It should just be do what you got to do.
No, exactly. I love that. So, a final question. It's about Denmark. It's about Copenhagen. And if I was to come over, I don't think I've been there before, actually, Copenhagen. If I was to come over, what would you suggest that I do while I'm over there?
Come to Arc.
Mhm.
Come to Arc for the Green Michelin vegan dinner. I would probably suggest, and this is really sort of dull stereotype, there's two things I think you should do. I think you should come in the summer, first of all, because Copenhagen is gorgeous in the summer, but it gets very cold in the winter and very dark. I think you should come over in the summer, and then you should do two things. You should go on the boat ride, the canal tour, which typically starts from Nyhavn, which is the place with all the colored houses that you see in every Copenhagen picturesque thing. You should do that because it's really nice. It shows you from the water side all of Copenhagen. You also get to see on that the Little Mermaid, which is one of the most underwhelming things in the world. But it's a thing you have to tick off. So instead of walking all the way over to it, get on the boat, you'll see it from the water side. And then you'll be like, that's it. Then you should go to Tivoli, the Tivoli Gardens. It's what inspired Walt Disney to make Disney World. Because, and in Denmark, like growing up, I've always taken this for granted until I went to a theme park in another country. But most theme parks and countries in other countries than Denmark is just sort of like a big lot, roller coaster, roller coaster, roller coaster done. Whereas in Denmark, a theme park is more like a separate world, what you would think of as like Disney World now. You walk in and everything is considered like there's little huts for like the food and drinks. There's flowers everywhere. It's very beautiful setup. So the Tivoli Gardens, which is also bang on in the center of Copenhagen, I would definitely go there. Have some traditional Danish food in there in one of the old restaurants. Go on some roller coasters. Have a little wander around. But I think they're the two things. Go on the canal tours and go to Tivoli. And then obviously all the good restaurants, all the good bars. The restaurant list in Copenhagen is well known now because food here is well known. There is a very long list of really, really good bars as well. Ruby, of course, being international known at the top. Pulp is one of my personal favorites. House of Machines is a relatively new one. Super lovely guys. They've got live music in there once in a while as well. And they have an unbelievable red snapper martini. So imagine like a gin Bloody Mary, but as a martini. It's amazing. Short term, I'm gunning for the global final. I'll give everything I have. I know people sort of go for different reasons. Some people go just, they've made it, they've won their country, that's huge. I know someone like Lele, once you win the GB, in a country like that, winning the national world class can change your life immediately. While other smaller markets is not the case. I have a very specific goal with this, which is obviously it's to bring Péché out to the world, to the industry and beyond that eventually. So I'm gunning for winning the globals. Short term, that's all my focus right now is on Canada. And then long term is Péché. Focus on that as a tool for the next generation of bartenders. I've realized there's a shared sentiment amongst every bar business in the world. Everyone wants to provide education and training and longevity to their staff, at least in theory. But then once there's talks of training, people often confuse it with these compliance checklists. So the standard shite compliance, you have to sit down, sit through a module of like 20 different slides that no one really reads so that they can tick a box. That isn't training. And then when I've talked to people about using Péché, I always get asked, does it calculate GP? Which has nothing to do with the front of house training. You have a POS system that will do your GP. So I'm taking a step back from the business side. But likewise, on the individual side, everyone wants to learn, but very few want to make the effort to learn. So it's moving towards giving access to all of these recipes, giving access to learning tools such as flashcards and tests that are instantly marked for feedback, because feedback is hard to get in the industry. I want to bring a tool out to people who want to learn, even if you're not in an environment that necessarily helps you actively.